Hello friends, this is Worm, according to a recent scientific study done by UTPA, and today I want to talk about hunter exotics and what I believe to be are the worst hunter exotics in Destiny 2 and basically how we can just make them better, right? Of course, we know that recently we potentially are getting a buff to some exotics that don't see a lot of usage, but I think Bungie is still missing the mark on a lot of exotics, including some things, one of which we're going to talk about in today's video, that are literally the worst exotic in the entire game. Like, I would put it like between all the classes, one of these exotics is absolutely the worst in the game, and for some reason they just don't want to change it, right? So yeah, let's talk about it. But before we do that, there's a lot of y'all who are not subs, so go down there, hit the sub button so you can follow us and get our daily video updates, blah blah blah. Shall we begin? Okay, so the first one here, I'm going to start high on the list with the worst exotic in the game, which is Blight Ranger. No secret here, Blight Ranger is absolutely terrible. Hunter, that's what we're doing today, if I didn't mention that, but Hunter has a lot of really good exotics, and if not good, they're at least viable, right? And it was actually very hard. Well, I'm not going to say very hard, but it was a little bit difficult to pick from this list because I see hunter exotics being used pretty frequently, right? However, Blight Ranger is the one exception to this, right? So basically, I'm going to read off what it does here. Attacks you redirect with your arc staff deal massively increased damage and generate orbs of power for your allies. Guarding with your arc staff does not consume extra energy. Okay. This is a bad exotic, and this is a bad exotic, number one, because it is a super only exotic, right? It is only useful to your super, and we've talked about this in videos before, right? You know, exotics that only affect your super unless they have an incredibly good power, such, or a lot of power, such as Curus of the Falling Star, or something along those lines. They are not very, not very widely used. Things like Helm of Saint 14. I mean, Helm of Saint 14 looks fantastic, but really, why would you use Helm of Saint 14 when you can use a vast number of other void exotics that are just better, like just flat out better, right? Blight Ranger is one of those. It is bad because it is a super only exotic, and Bungie, they've kind of been trying to change some of these exotics lately, by doing the surge mods and stuff like that, but I don't think that's necessarily the best idea. And this is not like, whenever I talk about exotics and some of the reworks to make them better, I don't like mentioning surge mods because I feel like that's just a lazy way to go. But Blight Ranger, when you reflect damage, of course, it deals increased damage when it flies back at the target. And the increased damage sounds on paper like a lot. It's 650% more damage. This means that in PvP, as far as I know, you can you can kill anybody if you can reflect their shots back at them, right? If somebody tries sliding into you with an SMG and they start spam shooting and you reflect those bullets back, you're going to kill them in like 3 bullets, right? Or something insane like that. But for PvE, which I think this is definitely more geared for PvE, 650% more damage is not a lot, right? I haven't ever done the actual damage testing numbers, but I have tried this against a bunch of ogres, and especially ogres. I think ogres are the best boss to show off this exotic for, but it tickles them, right? It does not do anywhere near the damage that it can do. In fact, you could have Blight Ranger on, or you could have on Raiden Flux, and I'm pretty sure Raiden Flux just does more damage, right? Like just attacking a boss with Raiden Flux will just flat out deal more damage than actually reflecting damage back. So what can we do about Blight Ranger to make it better? Well, number one, the power fantasy behind it is, you reflect shots back, right? And I think that's a really cool. I think that's a good idea. I think that's keep what it has right now. Keep everything the way it is right now. Maybe in PvE, increase that damage to 1,000%. And I know that sounds crazy and insane, but again, if you take this in and test it, it does not seem like that much damage, right? So what you do is increase 1,000%. Why not for one patch just to see how it works? 1,000%, bonus damage. You just reflect all the shots that are coming back, right? It feels to me like this is more of a defensive, a defensive super, right? Arc Staff is typically an offensive super. but this exotic feels like it makes it to a defensive super. So I think that building into that, that defensive idea is absolutely a play. Also, it says here that reflecting projectiles will generate orbs of power. I don't know how many orbs this can like produce, but I'm pretty sure if it's just like any other super, it can only produce 5, right? And that should, I mean, honestly, let's be real, that should be uncapped, right? Instead, you should have a damage threshold. If you block, X amount of damage, like say 500 damage, it creates an orb of power. That way, against bosses, like an ogre, for example, where their eye blast does minimal amounts of damage, but it happens really fast, you can make a ton of orbs, just absolutely spew orbs. Or you take like a boss stomp mechanic that deals a ton of damage in one go, right? It can pop out like, a couple of orbs. And I think that obviously orb generation could potentially get out of hand. So maybe there's like a cooldown on it. Maybe there's like a 2-second cooldown between orb generation. But with this equipped, like this is, again, it's defensive. It almost feels like more of a team play exotic. Have it create more orbs of power, right? Also, you could give it the old treatment like you do like you have with Star Eater Scales, where when you pick up orbs of power, you can it'll give you more super energy. Or better yet, here's an idea for you. When you're blocking damage, any orbs that you create, you can also pick up those orbs, right? So, normally when you use a super, you create orbs of power for your teammates only. With this exotic, this is the one exotic in the game, the one, thing in the game that allows you to pick up your own orbs of power. And I think that would be really fun, right? From the super, because then you could stand there, you could block a ton of damage, you could take the aggro of the boss, right? And make a ton of orbs, get your super back a lot quicker because you're making a bunch of orbs and you're able to pick those orbs right back up, and so on and so forth. Now, I think also a really cool idea behind Blight Ranger would be whenever you activate your super and Blight Ranger is equipped, you take all the aggro from all the enemies, right? So basically, maybe not all the aggro, but you take, 90% of the aggro from wherever it is. So if you're, doing a Grandmaster and you're in a boss room and it's just your team and the boss is focused on you, right? And it's shooting you while your super is active. So then you can reflect those shots back better. Because what would be worse than, going in to deal damage, popping this, your arc staff with this exotic equip, thinking, okay, I'm about to block back, I'm block damage, blah, blah, blah. And the boss doesn't even shoot at you, right? Like that's kind of a bad feeling. So this exotic should maybe like grab the boss's aggro, like a little bit stronger, or not a little bit, but a lot stronger, and again, creating orbs that you can pick up. I think that would be a really, really strong ability. And again, it would kind of tie into the whole idea behind this. And then, obviously that's still all based around the super, right? Bungie, I'll leave this to their creativity, but maybe they could add, a surge mod, or, just something extra, like, melee kills and ability kills. Ability kills grant bonus super energy, right? I think that'd be fantastic, right? And that's all you'd really need to do to Blight Ranger to make it, or that's one of the things that you do to Blight Ranger. I shouldn't say all you can do, because I'm sure there's a lot you can do, but that would be one of the better things I think you could do with Blight Ranger without really changing its identity and its persona and stuff like that. But yeah, that is Blight Ranger. God, that is a terrible exotic. But let's move on to the next one. And this one I kind of debated putting on this list because this one actually got a rework last season, or maybe it was 2 seasons ago or something like that. But it is Sealed Ahamkara Grasps. Baby, Bungie wants these to work so bad, and they're just not doing it. So currently, the way they work, dealing melee damage, reload your currently equipped weapon, charged melee, final blows, reload all weapons, and it provides a large benefit to airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons, and movement speed and jump height after dealing melee damage. So here's what I want to point out here. This is basically Stompies, right? But with melee damage. You have an additional, something added to it. When you punch an enemy, right, you get increased movement speed, you get airborne effectiveness, increase, and you get jump height for 5.5 seconds is what it says here on Light GG. 5.5 seconds. I don't know about y'all, but I am not jumping up and down for 5 seconds of plus 50 AE for increase in mobility, increase in jump height, You know, the coolest thing that this exotic does is reload your weapons, your equipped weapons, when you actually deal melee damage. And even that is just, it's outclassed by marksman dodge. I mean, marksman dodge can do the same thing, but from safety. You don't have to run up to a boss and like a grandmaster to punch them, to reload your weapon, and then go back at it. Like I'm sure that, you know, we could sit here and think of scenarios where like, oh yeah, like it would work in this blah, 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 very specific scenario. But they're not good. They got to rework, and they're still just not good. Now, they want to build into the idea of dealing melee damage, right? So what I would say Bungie could do, since they're so in love with doing surge mods, add an effect on here. When you punch an enemy, you get ×4 stack, ×4 surge mod, ×4 stacks of whatever your subclass surge is, right? So if you're on solar and you got a throwing knife, right? You throw a throwing knife, you get a kill with it. Next thing you know, you have ×4 stacks of a surge mod going on. You're doing 25% more weapon damage. That would be a nice addition for this. Also, I think that the stat increase you get needs to be greatly, or the timer for it needs to be greatly increased. 50 airborne effectiveness is very good. Don't get me wrong. Like that is fantastic. But really in any PvE or PvP situation, like first of all, what does airborne effectiveness even do for us in PvE? Right? It's like it's not a factor I consider heavily in PvE. PvP, yeah, it's a little bit more viable. But in PvP, we'll start with PvP. PvP, I punch an enemy. 9 times out of 10, we're either going to trade that fight out, right? I'm going to punch them, they're going to punch me, I'm going to punch them, and they're going to punch me. But the way that Destiny works and whatnot, we're going to kill each other anyways, right? It doesn't make any sense. At what point am I jumping up for this 5 seconds of increased stats after a melee duel? After a melee duel where I am probably cubed, right? I can't go into the next fight because I'm at risk of dying here, right? Like the effect should be extended to like 10, I would say even 15 seconds, right? For 15 seconds, you get 50 airborne effectiveness, you get increased mobility, you get increased jump height, and of course it reloads the magazines from reserves. I also think that the whole idea of a melee damage versus a charge melee final blow, like just remove that. Any melee damage that you do reloads all your weapons regardless. Right? Like, I think that that's the way that it should work, because, again, especially on something like Void, like, how often are you really getting powered melee kills on Void, right? How often are you throwing a smoke at an enemy, and boom, it's taking them out and they're dead, and all of a sudden you've got all your weapons reloaded? Like, that just doesn't feel very good, right? So I think that whole charge melee thing should just be removed, and it should reload all weapons immediately on any melee damage, right? That would help it to feel better, right, in what it does, right, which is a melee centric build. You could also kind of go crazy here, and when you deal melee damage, you get a subclass buff depending on your subclass. So, you know, if you are a hunter, right, and you walk up and you punch an enemy, you turn invis, and then you can dip back behind cover. Or if you're, you know, if you're on solar, right, you go up, you stab an enemy. Not even throw a throwing knife, just walk up and hit him with a stab. You get restoration ×1 for, you know, 7 seconds or something like that. Or ×2, even better. Right? Same thing. You get amplified, you get woven mail. I think the only issue we'd have would be with stasis, because stasis doesn't have a subclass specific buff keyword to it. So maybe just do like a stasis overshield. I don't really know. Like, I think Bungie, that's one of the problems with stasis currently, but stasis is for another video, you know. But I think just adding that little bit of to this exotic really could bring it up in usage. I think that mainly because of the exotic's play style that you have to have, and because the exotic, you know, you have to you know, get melee hits, it reloads weapons. Like, I don't ever think that it's really going to be great and widely used. Like, I don't think it's ever going to be meta. But come on, man. I mean, it got a buff a couple, like last season. I think it was last season, wasn't it? Or was it 2 seasons ago? It was buffed not too terribly long ago, and I still literally have never seen anybody use it. And this is not one that I'm like, oh, like, I'm just not paying attention, but like, literally, I have never seen these gauntlets being used by anybody. Not even in like like a strike, a regular strike, not even in, you know, playing around in patrol. Nowhere. I've never seen anybody use these, and it's because this perk is so situational and it needs to have stronger buffs tied to it. Increase that timer to 15 seconds. Remove that charge melee ability thing. Just take it all out altogether. right? And then, like I said, give it maybe a subclass synergizing verb associated with it, or give it the surge or whatever. Yeah, but that's it. That's Sealed Hamkar's graphs. The last one that I wanted to go with, and this is one, again, it has its uses and it can be viable, but I don't ever see it being used. And that is Khepri's Sting, right? So Khepri's Sting is I would say, I guess, a void exotic is what it's meant for. Actually, it is meant for, but its exotic perk is Touch of Venom, which states punching someone with full melee energy will instantly cast Smoke Bomb. Your smoke bombs deal increased damage, regenerate more quickly when stuck to a surface, and grant True Sight after damaging a target. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I cannot figure out what these are supposed to be used for, what they're supposed to be good at, right? Like the Smoke Bomb dealing 50% extra damage, that is not bad. I'm pretty sure that will allow you to punch somebody and get a one-hit melee kill off on them, right? But of course it consumes your class ability, so there's that, which is neat, don't get me wrong, but like at the same time, how often in the Crucible are you running around just stabbing people? Okay, anyways, that's the first thing. Now I've got some notes here actually on this exotic. First of all, the Smoke Bomb from Quick Fall. So whenever you are in the air and you have Trapper's Ambush and you dive to the ground, that does not receive the damage bonus, which is lame, and it should. Okay, there's your first buff, Bungie. Let's see here, what else was it? Oh yeah, also Void Invisibility prevents the ability recharge bonus from applying. So the ability energy recharge bonus, when you stick it to a wall and it sticks there and it, doesn't activate and it's beeping and pinging, where the smoke bomb is, you have 500% melee charge rate, right? Which is very good. Like that's very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But again, I think the strength of smoke bombs is the ability to confuse players, right? And like the way that it works currently, it doesn't want you to be invis. And really, when you throw a smoke bomb down at a corner or something, you want the enemy to think that's where you are. That's why the smoke bomb stays there and pings their radar. That way you can go off on a flank. This exotic does not promote that, right? Because while you're invisible, you throw it down, it turns you invisible. You don't get that faster recharge time, right? So this is in my opinion already kind of outclassed by Graviton Forfeit, because Graviton Forfeit does something very similar. When you're invisible, your melee ability charges faster. The only thing this really does is it gives you that ability to stab somebody and apply a smoke bomb to them, right? Apply smoke to them. You also get True Sight as well. The True Sight thing only applies when you're invisible. Again, right? Like True Sight, hang on. If I'm reading this correctly, dealing damage with a smoke bomb. So you throw it and it sticks to an enemy. I really can't figure out the places. Like I'm trying to read the notes on it here and I can't figure out what its role is, which is why I think it needs a buff so desperately. We're going to scratch all this. Here's what I say. Okay. Number one, bring back Backstab from Destiny 1. For those of y'all who didn't play in Destiny 1, Backstab was an arc tree perk where if you meleeed somebody from behind, it dealt 400% more damage, 500% more damage. It could allow you to one-shot melee people from behind, which is fantastic. I think that would be to me, that would just make sense. I think that's actually what this exotic did in Destiny 1, is it'll gave you Backstabber, right? So do that in Destiny 2. That way, if a hunter gets behind you and they stab you, it's an instant kill. Right? Because like let's be honest, it's not that hard to notice when somebody's going behind you, right? Even if they're invis, like it's not very difficult, but at the same time, like I don't think it would be OP by any means, and same thing, like, against supers, I think it could even one-hit melee some supers, which sounds busted and broken, but at the same time, like this would be an exotic. You have to commit a whole exotic to doing this, right? As for the whole, the True Sight thing, I would say, because it wants to build into True Sight. I gotta think for a second. How could we build into True Sight with this? Dealing damage with smoke bomb grants True Sight for 3 seconds. You could, here's what you could do. You could give it a buff where when you get kills while True Sight is active, it extends the duration of True Sight. Meaning that if you could manage to get multiple kills and chain kills together quickly, because it only activates for 3 seconds, if you could chain kills together quickly, you get basically infinite true sight without having to use Wish Ender and aim down sights constantly, right? I think that that would actually be a really, really cool, like a cool thing to do. Because let's be honest, like in Destiny, there's not a whole lot of maps where you're going to be running into somebody every 3 seconds and have the ability to kill them every 3 seconds, right? So, you know, it activates true sight for 3 seconds. You get a kill because, you know, you throw the smoke bomb against the door, right? An enemy walks into it, they get trapped in the smoke, then you kill them because they're weakened. Then, you know, your true sight is extended up to, you know, maybe it's 2 seconds per kill, or hell, 3 seconds per kill, up to a maximum of 10 seconds, right? 3 seconds per kill, you know, all of a sudden you've got, you know, 3 seconds extra time. And if you go in and you chain those kills together, you can continuously see people through walls. I think that that would actually be a pretty awesome change for this. And I don't see that being problematic. And the reason, again, that I don't see it being problematic is because the timer is, your window to do it is very short. Like, if it would be different if it said dealing damage with smoke bomb grants true sight for like 10 seconds. I would say no, that like it would honestly be fine, kind of where it was, right? But that would be, you know, I think that that would be a pretty substantial buff for this exotic. I think that also smoke bombs should linger for, you know, 100% longer as well. You know, it deals additional damage, 50% additional damage. Why not also increase the duration so that smoke bombs can potentially become an actual threat, right? Because currently, you know, smoke bombs last, what is it, 4 seconds, and then the weaken effect lasts for 8 seconds, right? Imagine if they double that, you know, so now the smoke lasts for 8 seconds while the weaken lasts for 12 seconds, right? Like, I think that that would be a really, really awesome change that they could make. Because again, I think that currently these exotics, like everything about them kind of works against each other, right? Again, you know, you plant a sticky bomb on the wall. The reason you plant a sticky bomb on the wall is because you want to trick somebody into walking into it while you go invis and go for a flank, but the melee recharge does not actually apply when you're invisible. So, you know, it's all kind of working against each other. So that would be the change that I would probably make to that. And I think that that would be, I think that'd be a fair, I think that'd be a fair changes to it without making it, again, without making it busted. But yeah, sorry. Okay. We've talked about the 3 exotics I think are the worst. We've been on, what, 22 minutes. Yeah, of course, I want to hear your thoughts on, you know, these changes here. Do you think they're good ideas? Do you think they're bad ideas? Like, tell me your thoughts on the changes. Do you think anything would be OP? Do you think, you know, some of these exotics would still need more to help them out? And of course, if I didn't mention an exotic that you would want to see change, tell me about it in the comments. Tell me the changes you'd want to make to it, because I love reading y'all's comments, and y'all have some fantastic ideas. But yeah, do all that. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, and do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason YouTube thinks you will like them. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye for now, guys.